Herb, I don't think it was a coincidence that on the first day of free agency, exactly as the negotiating window began, the Eagles had a press conference with Saquon Barkley about his 2-year extension.
I thought you were going to say at the exact same time free agency began, Twitter went down.
Well, that happened too.
So it was an interesting day. But yeah, a lot going on, a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, and the Eagles quiet as we expected them to be. They've lost some players, which we expected to happen. So if you're one of those fans right now who's like yelling or throwing things or biting your fingernails, worried about what's going on, nothing out of the ordinary has really happened yet. This is kind of what we expected.
Well, nothing out of the expected. Yeah. Maybe not. It is out of the ordinary for the Eagles not to be competitive in the acquisition phase, but we knew that was going to happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. This is the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan. He's Rueben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. A lot to get into today. We'll start off with the players the Eagles lost. We'll look at which of their players are still available. They have not signed anyone yet as we're recording this on Monday afternoon. And we know that it's a gamble recording this. Howie's waiting to pounce after we get done this one. And if something happens, we'll have more pods all week. But we knew the Eagles were going to lose some of their top free agents. And that's happened already on Monday. Both Milton Williams and Josh Sweat leaving. I think those were the two guys that we thought would get a lot of money, that because of that, there was no chance they'd really be back, and they're gone.
Yeah, two key members of the number one defense in the league, two guys who had huge Super Bowls, two key pieces of the team, and there was nothing the Eagles could do. The numbers were so high, and I'm curious what the numbers would have been for those two if they, at the end of the regular season, say, or even after the NFC Championship game, because they both really increased their value in the Super Bowl in New Orleans. And that's what happens if you have a big Super Bowl. The whole world is watching, and there's just a little extra value to that. I think to teams, if you can perform on the biggest stage, you're just going to be in demand. And the numbers that those two got, and they certainly deserved every penny. Eagles just weren't in a position to compete for them. And we knew that was going to happen, but it's still, look, I mean, Josh Sweat's been here since 2018. Milton's been here 4 years, and they're both draft picks. They're both mid-round picks, and it's hard to see them go. These are key guys on this whole Nick Sirianni run of the last 4 years, the last 3 years, if you want. So all the losses on defense so far, and there's going to be a lot of work to do on that side of the ball.
Yeah, and they already took care of their priority. They re-signed Zach Bond to that 3-year deal. So that was their priority. Entering free agency, they took care of it, and they kind of knew what was going to happen here. Let's start with Milton Williams. He ended up with a 4-year, $104 million deal, $26 million average annual salary to go to the New England Patriots. That's massive.
A lot of money for a guy who, honestly, up until this year was just kind of seen as just a guy here, and he was good, and we talked about Milton, and we always said he was one of the more underrated guys on the team. But if you had said to me a year ago, Milton was going to be a free agent and get over $100 million, I would say you're crazy. I mean, he just wasn't seen as that kind of player. He was a good, solid piece, rotational piece, and he just kind of played himself into this range, and he plays a position that there's not a lot of guys who can do everything that he does. And that just makes him really, really valuable. And he's young. He's 25, which makes him valuable as well. So you have a young guy. And honestly, these are the kind of free agents Howie would always pursue. The guys coming off the first rookie contract, 4 years, second round picks or later. So, they're free agents after 4 years, and he would pounce on those guys. And now he's losing those guys. I think in a way, it seems like Howie's a victim of his own drafting. Like, he's drafted so well the last several years that he just can't keep all these guys. They've developed into good players. So I think in some ways, losing Milton is a bigger loss than losing Sweat. I think what he did.
I think it absolutely is.
What he meant to this defense. Yeah. And he just became so much at the heart of everything that was happening up front. And whenever Jalen Carter had a double team, man, Milton would pounce. He would take advantage of that opportunity and make a big play. So really came into his own. I know all things being equal, he wanted to be here and he would have loved to stay, but that kind of money, I mean, the Eagles couldn't come anywhere close to that.
Yeah, all things were not equal.
Right. And I'm sure,
weren't.
I'm sure Howie tells these guys, look, call me before you do anything. I don't even know if like, why do you even bother? Like, you're not going to be able to compete.
Yeah, he's the third highest paid defensive tackle in the league behind Chris Jones and Christian Wilkins.
That's incredible.
So it's incredible company. And I think, you look at a guy like Milton Williams and he's 25, he'll turn 26 before the next season.
Right.
So, but gosh, he's so young and he's viewed as an ascending player. He's gotten better year over year in all 4 of his years in the league. Even if the numbers don't say that, he has gotten better. The numbers finally said that in 24. And it's more than just the sack numbers. He had 5 sacks in the regular season, obviously the 2 sacks and the forced fumble in the Super Bowl, but 12.5% pressure rate, which is crazy high among defensive tackles. Now, a lot of that was him being the beneficiary of seeing the one-on-ones because Jalen Carter got doubled. But I think it's like, you can't just say that it doesn't really matter. Like, there are a lot of guys getting one-on-ones who aren't winning them as consistently as Milton did this year.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know if you see guys improve, like improve so gradually. And all of a sudden they're like one of the best, they're considered one of the best in the league. And you just don't see 3rd round picks kind of ascend the way he did. And like even a year ago, he wasn't seen as that kind of player. Like if he hit free agency this time last year, I don't think anything like this happens. He probably would have been within range of re-signing. But yeah, he definitely took his game to another level, and then really another level in the postseason.
In a way, kind of like Josh Sweat early in his career, just got better year over year. And obviously last year was kind of a step back, but very similar. Like year over year, just got better and better and better. And I really do think Milton hasn't played his best football yet, which is why the Patriots broke the bank to get this guy. Yeah,
I think there's a very good chance of that. And I love I've always loved his attitude. I always loved talking to him. He's just a very quiet, humble guy. But man, there is so much like inner determination and inner motivation that's sometimes masked by just how kind of quiet he is. Like when you talk to him, like sometimes it's even hard to hear him. He's just such a quiet guy. But he wants to be the best. I mean, I remember him telling me early on in the season, like, I want to be the best interior lineman in the league. And like, at that point, I'm like, all right, that's great to say. And it's great to think that way. But now, I mean, look where he is and he's earned it.
And like, as much as I know he said he wanted to be back here, I do think he's looking forward to the opportunity to be the guy. And he was just never going to be the guy here as long as Jalen Carter's here. And I think that's something that was important to him. I think he wanted that, and he has that now. So, yeah, I like, as much as I think he liked it here, in a way, I think that was more important to him. Obviously, the money takes everything, but I do think just going somewhere where the defense gets built around him more means a lot to him.
Yeah, and when you pay somebody that much money, the defense better be built around you.
Mm-hmm.
So he's the centerpiece of that defense now.
So there's a lot of defensive tackles still on the market, like veterans. The market doesn't look as depressed as I thought it would based on some of these contracts that are being given out. I thought maybe it would be a little depressed because you have what's considered to be a really strong rookie class coming in the draft. There are some names for the Eagles who are available. I don't want to say them because there's a chance this will make the podcast very outdated, but how do you think they replace Milton? Because it's an important spot in the middle of this defense next to Jalen Carter. That player is going to see so many one-on-ones. They need to win them.
Yeah, and I think the best opportunity to replace him will probably be in the draft. I just don't think there's anybody on the roster. Certainly.
The top guy would be Moro Ojima, who is entering year 3 as a 7th-round pick. Certainly has improved.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's ready to be the number 2.
Yeah, I would agree.
Maybe more Jordan Davis on pass rush downs.
Possibly.
He hasn't seen a lot of that because Milton's been so good.
Yeah. But I mean, I think an interior lineman in the 2nd or 3rd round would make sense. We'll see how it plays out and how things fall in the 1st round. It's certainly possible, but I think that's their best chance. Is I think this, and there's a lot of names out there. I think this offseason is about being young and being inexpensive, and I think Howie's going to build with draft picks as much as possible. And who's the answer at corner? You lose Isaiah Rodgers and Slay and Bradbury for what it's worth, and Keely Ring. I mean, there's just every position. I think it's going to be up to young guys to replace. I just don't think Howie's going to go out and sign some 30-year-old veteran interior lineman who's on the way down.
We'll see. I think there's something to be said for at least it's like you get your Paris Campbell in there because you don't know if you're going to draft a receiver. Like you have to at least make sure the roster is solid so you don't have to reach for needs in the draft.
Yeah, I'm not sure Paris Campbell did that.
But that's the philosophy. I'm not saying it worked or it didn't work, but and I think you're focusing on Paris Campbell of it all. But I'm talking about like you want to have a situation where you don't have to reach. And Devontae Parker was that more so. But like you want to have someone in place so that you don't have to reach for a need when you get to the draft. And I do think that that's a possibility for the Eagles in free agency.
It's a possibility, yeah. I mean, as long as that guy, is reasonably priced.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going to be in the market. Like you see some of these contracts in your wall. You're overpaying for needs. I don't think the Eagles are going to do that, but they're going to sign someone. They're not going to. They're not going to just sit this one out.
Sure.
Okay. So that's the Milton Williams deal. The next one's Josh Sweat to the Arizona Cardinals. He reunites with Jonathan Gannon down there in Phoenix. 4 years, $76.4 million, $41 million guaranteed. That's a big deal for Sweaty.
Yeah, you asked me before, free agency started where Sweat's going to end up. And I said Arizona, and you were disappointed because you wanted Arizona. It made a lot of sense.
Yeah, so you and I said like who's going to be the first Eagles player to be signed elsewhere. And I guess we were both technically wrong because I guess Isaiah was the first one to agree to terms, Isaiah Rodgers. But I think you and I both thought there was a chance either Milton Williams or Josh Sweat would end up in Arizona. And one of them does. Arizona obviously had a ton of cap space. So, you see the cap space, you see the connection to the former defensive coordinator. Not hard to figure that out.
Yeah, it made sense. And they need help on that side of the ball. Excuse me. So it did make sense, and he'll do well out there. He's still a young guy too. And Sweat, I think, turns 28 before the season. He's still 27, 7-year veteran. Had a weird career, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of stretches where you just didn't notice him for a long period of time, and then he would look just I don't know what happened to my voice, Dave, but then
you want to take a little pause here?
Sure.
All right, Ruby, all right there.
I'm fine.
Okay. The frog is out of the throat. We're talking Josh Sweat. You're right. Kind of an up and down career for him here. Not up and down, just a weird career.
Yeah.
Ultimately, a really good player, really good 4th round pick for the Eagles. That 2018 draft is one of Howie's best. They traded back and they got Dallas Goedert. They got Josh Sweat and Devontae Maddox, Jordan Mailata. Even Matt Pryor for a 6th round pick was like fine.
Didn't have a 1 that year and still had a really good draft.
Yeah, well, they had the 1 and then they traded out. Yeah. Sweat had 43 sacks in 7 seasons, 8th all time on the Eagles sack list. He was a good player.
He was a really good player, and he was a player that got better. And he made a Pro Bowl here. 22, he had career high 11 sacks. He would have these stretches like 5, 6, 7 games in a row where you wouldn't notice him, and then he would have like 5.5 sacks in his next 7 games. You just never knew when it was going to come. Or I remember you doing a story when he was in that really bad slump at the end of last year. I think he went 8 games.
Yeah, and he was like, "What do you mean? I'm playing the same way."
And his thing was, I feel like I'm still affecting the game. I'm still getting pressure on the quarterback, and maybe we do use sacks a little too much, where pressures and quarterback hits are really important. But
players only use sacks when they're about to get paid.
Exactly. And when he was on, like when he was on one of his runs, I mean, he was just really, really ferocious player. And I loved his effort against the run. He was just a guy that played hard all the time, and great 4th round pick.
Yeah. He got so much better against the run.
Yeah.
Just like really strong at the point of attack, did everything, played with great effort, would chase down plays. They're going to miss him. I mean, no doubt about it. He was a really good starter for them, and he grew into that role. Obviously, he had to get there, but man, that's a big contract too. What do they say? $41 million guaranteed.
Yeah, good for him.
And he'll obviously fit in there. Gannon knows what I think both of these fits are very good. Milton in New England, and now Josh Sweat with the Cardinals. And we didn't mention Milton. Like, it was initially reported that he might end up in Carolina. We knew the Cardinals were sniffing around on him. There were a lot of teams, and I think the Panthers might have gotten used a little bit to get him that big deal in New England.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going around this time of year. You'll see a report that this team's really close to signing a guy, and then that kind of, then his number goes up magically in the next hour. Agents and teams know how to play the game, and I think the Panthers got played a little bit, but good for Sweaty, and it's a lot of money for him, and I'm sure he'll use it wisely. He was fun to have around.
Yeah, really fun guy to have around for sure. I should mention that we didn't do this caveat. The league year does not begin until 4 p.m. on Wednesday, and it seems like every year there's like one or two deals that ends up falling through because you can't put pen to paper until 4 p.m. on Wednesday. So teams are agreeing to terms with players through their agents, which is what's allowed right now. But nothing is official until we get the 4 p.m. on Wednesday.
Right. And once in a while you hear a story about a guy changing his mind, and they have every right to do that till they actually sign the contract, which they can't do till Wednesday afternoon. So, we'll see. That's never happened to the Eagles. I don't remember.
Well, I mean, the only one that was kind of like that, it was before this window business. It was the Frank Gore, obviously.
Right. Yeah. That was a little different case, but right. That was.
I just want to say it because
similar.
If we don't mention him, we'll get a bunch of emails. Like, you didn't mention Frank Gore.
He's the third leading rusher all time.
Mm-hmm.
Is he a Hall of Famer? Frank Gore, Hall of Famer?
Yeah, I think so. If you're going to be an accumulator, you better accumulate a lot, and he did.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think we'll get in. Another former Eagle on his way in. It's going to be really tough to replace. And we talked about Milton. I mean, Sweat, you have BG. Who knows what he's going to do? Maybe they'll try to get him to play another year. Even if
you have him, like, I don't know if you can rely on him to be your third guy in the rotation.
I mean, if he plays the way he did this year, then that's great. I don't know if he can do that, especially coming off these injuries. Who knows when he'd even be? I guess he'd be available in 11 more weeks. But they've got to get something out of Bryce Huff. You think he might not even be here? You've said that. There just isn't a lot there.
Yeah, you have Nolan Smith, who is really good and he's probably getting better.
Yeah,
I think you feel pretty good about Jalix Hunt. I just don't know how much you can put on him in year two.
Yeah, and he was playing a lot by this, like the last month, 6 weeks of the regular season and the playoffs. He was playing a lot, and he was good. I mean, he had 1.5 sacks in the postseason, had 1.5 in the regular season. So you could see the growth. I think he has a chance to be pretty good. It's hard to tell what his ceiling is. He's just such a raw.
Yeah, I don't know if he has a ceiling.
Maybe not. I mean, I'd be shocked if he doesn't get significantly better. I just don't know where that's going to be, what that looks like. So they don't have a lot else. They just don't have a lot else. So it's another area. I mean, I haven't taken an edge in my first mock draft. I think you did as well.
Mm-hmm.
It makes a lot of sense. There's pretty good depth at that position in the draft, even at 32. I think if they can't get the edge they want, I could see them getting out of 32 and trading down. But they're going to have to find somebody somewhere to rush the passer. You saw what a big part of that Super Bowl was the pressure they got. I mean, that might have been the story.
The biggest, yeah.
Might have been the story in that game. And the two guys that spearheaded that are gone. So they've got to find a way to get. And Jalen Carter always get his. But yeah, from the outside, I mean, they need help.
Which of these two losses is more significant?
I still think it's Milton, just because he plays a position that I think it's really harder to find somebody with that skill set. Like, you can find edges who can rush the passer and get pressure, but to find a a skill set like Milton has. I just think that's a really, really tricky thing to do.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I think that is, that's going to hurt.
Yeah,
losing him. I feel like you have probably more there than you have at edge, which is why like edge to me is a bigger need.
Sure,
but yes, it's not ideal losing Milton.
Yeah,
and then the other one. So by the way, in terms of the compensatory pick formula or the projection of it from over the cap, Milton Williams is going to bring back a 3rd round compensatory pick. Josh Sweat brings back a 4th round.
Really?
Isaiah Rodgers brings back a 6th round.
I thought it'd be 2 3s and a 6.
A 4th round. I mean, and this is a projection. So.
Yeah. Well, they have the formula nailed, though.
They're pretty good at it.
They're pretty good. And I think that's just a big part of this offseason is that's why I don't think Howie, if he does sign anybody, I think it'll be, and I think you raised this the other day, somebody that doesn't apply to the compensatory pick formula, somebody who's been released.
Yeah. Or they'll wait until after the draft like they did with Becton.
After the draft, the signings don't affect the compensatory formula. I think it's the Monday after the draft, right? Is the day that it changes. So it's basically net gain loss free agents up through the draft. And I think that's where you get your bargains anyway. And I think there'll be value there. And I wouldn't be surprised if Howie does not sign a free agent, like a free agent against the formula.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I think they'll sign somebody, but it might be someone who doesn't count toward the formula.
Right. But I mean,
and you look at like there are some veteran defensive tackles, especially who are available, who were released by their former teams.
Yeah.
Now the price tags have not been as low as I expected.
Yeah.
You see some of these deals out there and you go, holy cow. But I do think there are some players who still make sense in that market. Now, Isaiah Rodgers.
Yeah.
We started that 2-year deal with the Vikings, $15 million. So $7.5 million APY for Isaiah Rodgers. That's a nice little payday for him.
It is. This guy made $3.6 million in his career up until now. And he played last year on the minimum, which for a third year guy or a guy who with 3 years experience was $1.055 million. So, and then he didn't make a penny the previous year because he was suspended. So he really played himself into that contract. And it's another one where I think he's better than Keely Ringo, but he's also going to cost a lot more. And he's 27 and Keely Ringo's 22. And I think that's what it comes down to. You got to, how he talks about trusting the young guys, trusting the draft picks, guys on rookie deals who aren't making a lot of money. And he's going to have to do that. I thought Isaiah Rodgers was pretty good this year. And
I like that as a decent like lottery ticket for the Vikings to get a guy who's still relatively young, good speed, hasn't really been given a chance to be a full-time starter. You end up with a pretty good player for not that much money.
Yeah. And he can run. He's got good length. And, I thought it was just such a brilliant move by Howie signing him. I guess it was in August after he got suspended, like in the spring, I think he got suspended like in June. They signed him in maybe 2 months later. And then he was just down in Florida for a year till he got reinstated. And I remember standing out there at OTAs, like watching him, like, oh my God, this guy's really good. And he played like it when he had to play. He played over 300 snaps. Slay missed a lot of time.
There was obviously a drop off. I don't think he played to the level of Slay.
Agree. Yeah.
And to his credit, like he was ready when teams attacked him, which they did. When you have Quinyon Mitchell on one side and now you don't have Slay on the other side. So that's something to keep in mind for this year too. Like if you have Quinyon on one side and you have whether it's Keely, Ringo, or someone else on the other side, that other side is going to see a lot of balls come their way.
Yeah, no question. And yeah, I mean, it's a big loss just because when they moved on from Slay, it meant Isaiah Rodgers was kind of in the mix to be a starter here, and they just couldn't afford it.
Yeah, I think he was someone that they'd be interested in bringing back, and he's probably the one. Like we'll talk about Mekhi Becton in a minute, but like, hey, go see what's out there for you, and then come back to us. And he comes back with 2 years, $15 million, and you go, well,
yeah,
sorry,
good luck.
Yeah, good luck. We wish you the best.
Yeah.
It's a shame because I do think that they would have been interested in bringing him back on a maybe even a 2-year deal for less, but you just can't do that.
Yeah, I think Vic really liked him, and I think he would have been better next year than this year, just because I think it's an easy thing to do to sit out a year.
It's also not easy to be thrown into the fire on a second's notice every week.
And he was good at it. Yeah, it never seemed to bother him. He was always ready. He was always comfortable when he went in there. So that's 3 big pieces from the defense right there. What's your confidence level in Keeley?
I'm a Keeley guy. I think there are just so many raw tools there. I like him as a boundary corner. I think Vic will be able to get the most out of him. I don't know what his high level is. I don't know what the ceiling is there. That the penalties do concern me. We've talked about how handsy he is. That is a concern. I might roll the dice with him because the other options, I mean, aren't great. Like You're talking about overpaying, and maybe Slay could come back. There's conflicting reports about Slay right now. We want to get into that at some point. Is he signing with the Steelers? Is he not? One report says he's agreed to terms. Another report says no. A few reports say no, it's not done yet. And he technically hasn't even been released by the Eagles yet. So we'll see what happens there. And he had a weird situation a couple years ago too, where we all thought he was going to Baltimore. And then at the last second, he ended up back here.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's been cut twice, but he's never really been cut. So I guess that's still in the mix, but I think he's most likely not going to be here. And if that's the case, you're right. I mean, other than Keeley, you're not going to put Eli Ricks out there. There's just not a lot of options.
Yeah, I mean, but then like Eli's your top backup at that point. So it's as much as they feel really good about Quinyon and Cooper, the depth they had at cornerback this year was such a luxury. After years of seeing them like scraping the bottom of the barrel, and remember that one year they just had like 15 injuries at cornerback, and they just had no one by the end of the season. To go into a season with your starters being Quinyon, Mitchell, and Slay on the other side. Avonte Maddox is your starter. Cooper Jean's on the bench. Then you have Isaiah Rodgers and Keely Ringo and even Eli Ricks as your deepest reserve. All of a sudden, Ricks might be your top backup next year.
Yeah. And I'm not sure that's something that he's ready for or capable of. I don't really know. He played a lot 2 years ago. Mixed results, but he was a young undrafted rookie. He's now will be going into his 3rd year. So who knows? I have a lot of faith in that coaching staff and that position. I think Christian Parker's really, really good. He'll get the most out of whatever he has. And then there's always do you want to move Cooper DeJean to an outside corner?
I get yelled at this, and I've explained my position. I don't think it's like a full-time move if they do it. I think it would be outside on base downs, which is like 20%, and then inside the rest of the time.
Yeah, it certainly makes a lot of sense. It certainly I don't know if Vic wants to do that. He might just want to have the kid just stay comfortable in one spot, but I'm sure he can handle it. I think he's a slot, but I'm sure he can handle playing outside.
Yeah, I wouldn't take him off the field. That's my point.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Yeah, but we'll see. The long way to go before that one. But we definitely know Milton Williams gone, Josh Sweat gone, Isaiah Rodgers gone. They go Milton to the Patriots, Josh Sweat to the Cardinals, Isaiah Rodgers to the Vikings. We'll see about Slay and the Steelers. That's what we know right now.
And we know the Eagles have made some big additions, a 3, a 4, and a 6. So,
yeah. And I don't think they're going to do anything to jeopardize those.
I agree.
Maybe the 6, but they're certainly not going to have a big ticket free agent sign.
And I really think that was a big part of Howie's plan going into this whole thing. I think he knew he was going to lose these guys, and he likes picks. He likes stockpiling draft picks.
And look, he's been honest about like needing to play younger players. He's been beating that drum before Nick Sirianni.
Yeah.
Because he's looking at the contracts he's given out to these top end players, and you have to supplement them with cheap young talent.
And we haven't mentioned, the one name we haven't mentioned is Zach Bond. And they've lost all these guys. They're really good players, but their defensive MVP is still here and will be here. So
yeah, and look, you could make a case that maybe that wasn't the best way to do it. I think it was. I think he had to be your priority. I think you'd rather give him the deal he got than give Milton, even if you signed him before free agency and you got like, I don't know, 4 for 96 instead of 4 for 104, whatever it is. I still think they made the right decision. You couldn't watch that defense last year and say anyone else needed to be back over Zach Bond.
I agree.
All right, let's take a break. On the other side, we'll talk about some of the Eagles free agents who are still available, and we'll look around the craziness that has gone on in the NFL.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we've got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store and NissanUSA.com today.
All right, we're back on the Eagle Eye podcast presented by Nissan. Rueben Frank and Dave Zangaro. Mekhi Becton is probably the top free agent from the Eagles available right now. What do you think happens?
Well, I think it's an encouraging sign that he's still out there. He's one guy who I really didn't have a sense of what the market would be for him and how teams would value him. So either he's overvaluing himself or teams don't think he's, they're not convinced by 1 year as a guard that it's worth, spending a lot of money on him. But certainly encouraging that he's still out there. And, it certainly augurs pretty well for the Eagles, I think. I think there's a fair chance he'll be back now.
I still think he's not going to be back, but yeah, like just by the nature of like that he hasn't signed with another team, obviously he has a better chance to be back here. I still think he's going to end up elsewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, because I still go back to thinking about like him at whatever number he gets. Is he that much better than Tyler Steen or whoever else?
Well, that's the operative question, and I think he probably is. I mean, without knowing the numbers, I'm just not a huge Tyler Steen fan. Maybe I'm misjudging him. I think he's okay. I think there's a big gap between Becton and Steen, and I think Steen is better. Look, when you have Lane on one side and you have Cam Jurgens on the other side, and Mulata and Landon on that line as well, you can get by with Tyler Steen. I just don't think he's as good as Becton.
Yeah, I don't think he's as good as Becton either. And we know Jeff Stalin doesn't think that because he made the move. But yeah, I also think that Becton wasn't great. He was good.
Yeah,
he was a good player. I think we get a little mesmerized by some of the highlight reel plays.
Sure.
From Becton because he's such a huge guy and he was like pancaking linebackers to the second level. And you see those plays and you go, holy cow, this guy's unbelievable. And he definitely was a road grader. I don't know if he's worth the contract I think he still might get.
Well, that's what it comes down to. What's that contract going to look like? And I agree with you. I don't think he was great. I think he had some really incredible reps. And there were some plays where he just looked like it just so dominating, but yeah, snap to snap, week to week, month to month. I don't think he played at a Pro Bowl level or anything like that. He was good. He was really good at times. But yeah, some of the highlights kind of could give you
and you could also say he's still really young and it was his first year playing guard. So
he's young as a guard.
Could be getting a lot better if he's going to stick a guard.
Yeah. And he's the one guy who just didn't have a sense of what his of what his value is, and maybe teams feel the same way. He'll be, he's only 25, be 26 next month. We'll see. I thought he'd be gone by now. I thought somebody would snap him up, and maybe somebody has, and we just don't know. But he's still out there. I'm going to say that he comes back. We'll have a little side bet.
Okay. Yeah, I think he's probably still gone. Now, the only wrinkle in this conversation with Becton, and we've talked about this before, but is if the Eagles think there's a chance he could be the next right tackle in whenever it is Lane decides to hang him up, that would change things for me because you're trying to figure out the heir apparent. If he's already in the building, you shouldn't let him leave.
Yeah. It would surprise me if they felt that he had a chance to be that. they just haven't seen him at tackle. I mean, he became a guard as soon as he got here.
They had the spring.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
early summer, the first 2 days of summer.
Yeah. It's possible. And certainly you wouldn't rule him out. I mean, he was a first-round tackle for a reason. He loves stout. It certainly – I sound like Kellen Moore. Certainly it is an intriguing thought. We'll see. I'm very curious to see what will happen with Becton.
How about Oren Burks? Didn't expect him to be a day one signing, but he's someone who definitely, hey, Oren, before you sign anywhere, let us know, because he's a valuable player.
Yeah, he is. And just from talking to him on locker cleanout day, I think he really wanted to see what the market said about him, and he wants to be a starter. And I think everybody does, and I don't blame him. Just don't think other teams are looking at him like, let's sign him as a starter. I think he's the kind of guy that you have a bunch of injuries, he becomes a starter, he'll do okay. I also wonder if, like, what 17 games of Oren Burks looks like as opposed to the however many he played, 4, I guess, once Nakobe got hurt.
Yeah, I think you would see a drop off.
Yeah, I do too. And he's 29. I think they have a pretty good chance to bring him back.
And then what about Kenny Gainwell?
Yeah, I don't know. He's another one. I don't think teams are looking at him the same way he looks at himself. I think he wants to be a starter, kind of an every down type of guy. I just don't think that opportunity will be there for him. I do think he, like, all things being equal, he'd like a larger workload than what he has here, because when you're backing up Saquon, you might get a series, you might get some mop-up duty when it's 40-10, but you're just not going to play that much. He really likes Saquon. They have a great relationship. He loves it here. Been here a while, but I think he's going to go. I think he's going to sign somewhere else.
So of those,
I just feel like Kenny Gainwell feels like, if I stay here, I'm just never going to find out if I'm the player I think I can be.
Probably true. Of those 3, so we're talking Mekhi Becton, Oren Burks, Kenny Gainwell. Rank them for me in terms of most likely to return to the Eagles to least likely.
I would say Burks is most likely, and then I say Burks is most likely, then Gainwell, then Becton. But I'll say Becton second.
Okay.
Because I've been speaking like I feel that way.
Yeah. So that's why it confused me quite a bit, because that's my order. I would go Burks, Gainwell, Becton.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay.
But I mean, everything I said about Becton and everything I said about Gainwell still applies. They're just different circumstances.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That was funny. You started saying this, like, I don't understand.
Yeah, I know.
I'm confused.
I know. Dave's big on continuity, everything making sense.
Yeah, I like things that make sense.
I don't care about that.
Yeah.
I would never have.
The league, it was kind of crazy on Sunday. I'm sitting at home and the league's going crazy. Like, the league's popping off. All these moves are happening. In a way, it was almost busier on Sunday than it was Monday.
Yeah, there was a lot going on. I was out seeing some music last night, and I was kind of off the grid, and I got home. I'm like, wow, it's been a busy night. I mean, it was just as newsy as today was in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah. It was kind of wild, and none of it was like directly related to the Eagles, but I think what it was a lot of it was teams re-signing their own players because this crop of free agency wasn't considered to be that great. So it's like, do you want to overpay for other people's players or make sure you get your own guys back? And a lot of teams just wanted to get their own guys back. Some of the big news around the league, though, I want us to react to it. Laramie Tunsil traded to the Commanders. They have a new tackle in town. That's a big move.
It is. We don't know exactly what they gave up. It sounds like, what, a 2, a 3?
Yeah, I can look it up now.
And a 4. Great player, older.
So Tunsil and a 4th round pick to the Commanders for a 2nd, 3rd, and a 4th.
There's a lot to give up for a guy who's.
You think the 4th is just the same 4th?
The same pick?
Yeah.
What is he, 31?
He's 31. Yeah.
It's a lot to give up from. He's a great player, 5-time Pro Bowl left tackle. Yeah, really good player, but and he's still really good. you have different philosophies. I mean, like Howie would never make a trade for a 5-time Pro Bowler who's 31. I don't think, especially giving up a 2 and a 3. But he's a really good player, and I think Washington, that NFC Championship game was a wake up call for them. They were kind of flying high. Now they might have made some of these moves if it hadn't been 55 to whatever it was. What was the score? 55. I don't remember. 10, 55, 20, 55, 22. I don't remember.
55, 23.
23.
You were close.
I was close. Yeah. And the 55 is the important part. But yeah, they've been pretty active. I wouldn't have made that move, but he's certainly a good player.
Yeah, I think like you can question the long term of it, which is fair. I think they're a better team with him.
I agree.
Yeah.
At least in 25. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see what other moves they make. They did cut Jonathan Allen. They brought back Zach Ertz. So that's a team where, I still think they're kind of set up to take a step back in 2024, but they have a lot of cap space and maybe they'll use some more of it here. The problem with that is sometimes when you have all this cap space, you feel the obligation to use it and then you overpay.
Yeah.
And you get yourself into some bad contracts.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. I mean, as long as they have that quarterback, they're going to be competitive. I'll be surprised if they make it back to the NFC Championship game. Mm-hmm. But
yeah, if that's the mark they have to hit, they're probably not going to hit that.
Yeah.
Devontae Adams, I think this was on Sunday. It all runs together, but signs with the Rams, 2 years, $46 million, really like a 1 year, $20-ish million deal. I think that's significant because that's an already good offense, and he'll be a much better number 2 in that offense than Cooper Kupp. I think that's a big signing for a team that's going to be competitive in the NFC.
Yeah, again, he's was he 32? It's like all these older guys. He's not the player he was in, like, with the Packers.
Oh, sure. I mean, he was
with the Raiders,
best receiver in the league then.
Not even the player he was with the Raiders. He's good. He's still good, but he's 32. And
I think the Rams are looking at this like our window's rapidly closing.
I guess.
Got to try to maximize.
Yeah. He's really good, and another descending older player, but still good.
Myles Garrett extension in Cleveland. I mean, this was insane money. $40 million a year, 4-year extension, $123.5 million guaranteed. You might hate Cleveland. Cleveland just got a lot better for Myles Garrett.
Yeah, it's funny how money can really change your opinion of a city. I like Cleveland.
I actually think Cleveland is an underrated city.
It is. I like Cleveland. And yeah, he'll have a chance to finish his career there, and then go to the Hall of Fame, which is right down the street. So it's a lot of money. And they're never going to be good. They're just never going to be good.
Yeah, probably not. He can rest easy, though, on that pile of $100 million plus. A
lot of $100 million bills.
It did end the dream for the Eagles, or for Eagles fans, I should say.
It was fun while it lasted.
Yeah, it was fun to have him dangling out there. Now, Trey Hendrickson's still potentially available in a trade. Not the player that Myles Garrett is. Still really good. But like if you're talking about a big blockbuster type trade, to me, Myles Garrett was like, he's worth it because he's just on a different level than everybody else.
Yeah.
I don't know if Hendrickson's at that level where you'd be willing to spend like you would have to get him because you have to pay him. So you're talking like a high end salary. But if that's the case, then you don't want to give up a ton of draft resources either.
Who's the only Browns quarterback to win a playoff game in the last 30 years?
Do you know the answer to this?
It's Baker Mayfield.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, what was it like hanging out with Myles? What kind of guy was he? I love this story.
You bring this up
because
much.
It was the coolest thing.
Yeah, I waited for him after practice to talk to him about working with Jordan Mailata.
And how was he?
It was great.
Yeah.
He was happy to talk about it. I wasn't supposed to be talking to him.
That's right.
So, but I figured it was the last day. So if I got kicked out, I was going home anyway.
I think that added to the whole thing was that you were doing it surreptitiously.
Yeah. Because I think he had maybe spoken earlier in the week, but he was fine with it. He was happy to chat about it, and it was cool. He gave me good insight on Jordan, and he was like shocked that was before Jordan really had his big ascension into being one of the best tackles in the league.
Right.
But he was amazed that this guy who had been playing football for only a few years was already that advanced.
Yeah.
He was a starter at that point, but he hadn't yet
Right. That was 22.
Maybe before the 22 seasons.
Yeah. I think it was 22 joint practices in Berea, Ohio. I just thought the whole thing was really cool. It was a cool story.
Yeah. Some other.
I'm trying to compliment Dave. He's just like, you're bringing that up again.
We talk about it a lot.
Well, it's a fun story.
We have some edge rusher contracts. Khalil Mack re-signs with the Chargers, 1 year, $18 million. It's a lot. Hassan Reddick, 1 year, $14 million with the Bucks.
Older guys.
Yeah. Would you have entertained a Reddick reunion?
No.
Okay. Man, he lost himself a lot of money.
He did. He's with his 15.
I saw some tweet from an insider today about all he's been through, and I was like, all he's been through, he put himself through it.
Yeah, he's not a victim.
Yeah.
5 teams in 6 years. When that happens, there's usually a reason for it.
Yeah, I still think he can be an effective pass rusher.
I do too.
We'll see. I'm curious.
I do too.
What happens there in Tampa?
But how old is he? Is he 32? No, he's 30. He'll be 31 in September. I like the guy, and he played great when he was here. His 2-year stint here was as long as since he was in Arizona. But I could see how he could turn off teams, and teams could think because he's, he's honest, and he's speaks freely about anything, and some teams are threatened by that. They don't want that. They don't want a locker room politician type guy. I think the Eagles, maybe other teams, were afraid that's what he was.
What do you think about the quarterback carousel? Have you been able to keep up with it?
No.
So
I need a flow chart.
Justin Fields to the Jets. Sam Darnold to the Seahawks. We have Geno Smith to the Raiders. Yeah. It's a lot of movement. Did I mention Sam Darnold?
No, yeah.
To the Seahawks? Okay,
yeah.
I just did. Yeah, a lot of movement. I don't know if any of these teams got better or worse, but a lot of movement.
And teams are so desperate. I mean, teams are, I'm all of a sudden like Daniel Jones, it makes you appreciate having Jalen Hurts, and being settled at that position is so important for a franchise. And that decision, the decision to draft a quarterback, to sign a long-term, I mean, it affects your franchise for the next decade and sometimes more. And you see so many teams out there who are just like, desperation comes in. Like, well, we could sign Daniel Jones. I mean, like, you're trying to win a championship, and that's your answer.
I think the funniest scenario is that the quarterback carousel stops and the Giants don't have one, and the top guy available is Daniel Jones.
Yeah, I don't think they would bring him back.
No, I don't think so either. But
imagine the reaction, more like the back page headlines be, yeah. I don't know.
Where do you think Aaron Rodgers ends up?
I don't know.
I don't know why the Giants would do it, but I think the Giants make sense. Because it doesn't make sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Talk about a team that needs to just restart, and I don't think they're going to do it.
The thing about Aaron Rodgers, like, he wasn't bad last year, but like, where's it going? Where's it going to take you? Like,
yeah, you're putting yourself in purgatory, and it's the worst place to be as an NFL team.
Yeah, but it would be a good fit. It would make a lot of sense.
Let's talk about the Saquon Barkley press conference a little bit. Like we mentioned, it was very funny. It started just around noon as the negotiating window opened. I don't think that was maybe a little bit of luck or coincidence, because he's in town and he's ready to do it. But I think it was kind of the Eagles telling you, hey, we made our moves.
Yeah. Yeah. This is like the Eagles saying, we're not going to make any headlines today unless we like create them by, having a presser. So I don't think it was a coincidence at all.
Yeah. He's always good, though. I always enjoy hearing Saquon talk. I thought the most fascinating thing was him talking about his legacy. And I straight up asked him, like, with this extension, you get to play a long time here now. Does that give you the best chance to cement your legacy? And he's like, 100%. And that's something he cares about. Like, some players don't care about that. He wants to, at the end of the day, know where he ranks in all-time running backs. And he wants to put himself near the top of that list.
I think a lot of players care about it. They just don't admit that they care about it.
I also don't think as many players have the historical knowledge that he has.
Well, that's true. Yeah, that's definitely true. He studies. I mean, he studies Marshall Falk and he studies Barry Sanders and he studies Frank Gore. He studies all those guys, and yeah, I love that. I love that he really, it's probably too late for him to be the best ever. Although if he strings together a bunch of 2,500 yard seasons, those numbers add up quickly. But because he had some years with the Giants that just held him back.
He has 4 years left on the contract. If he just goes over 2,000 each of those 4 years,
yeah, then he's the best ever. Yeah. But he's so thoughtful, and he's one of those guys that he'll listen to a question and think about what he wants to say. And you really get, because of that, you really get a window into who he is, because he's just so thoughtful and honest and open about what he's thinking and what different things mean to him. And I think that's why, for me, I really enjoy listening to him, because you really get to know him when he speaks.
Yeah. So to me, his place legacy wise stood out. It was funny. I asked him about the Super Bowl and if it matched his expectations.
That was an interesting answer.
It was, but I also understand it. Basically, he said he tiptoed around the fact that it didn't, winning it didn't live up to his expectations. He didn't want to say that because it makes it sound like he's ungrateful, and that's not what he means. But he's like, I thought about that my whole life. So it's you have all these preconceived notions of what it's going to be like. I know AJ Brown talked about that a little bit too. And then you get there and it's okay, what's next? Yeah. And he said the only time in his life he didn't experience that is when he had his children.
Yeah.
He said, because he wasn't, he said, what did he say? I wasn't there as a kid thinking about a baby popping out.
Yeah. Yeah. That was funny.
But it's fascinating perspective, because I love hearing about players. They wait their whole lives to reach that mountaintop. Then you get there and it's all right. Okay.
Wasn't there a sense after the Super Bowl of they were on such a roll, they were playing so well, they just kept winning every week? It was it just felt like there should be another game. I kind of,
they wouldn't have been sober enough to play it.
That's probably true. Yeah. See the injury report, Nolan Smith. But yeah, and I think some of the guys sense that. I think that the real joy came from the togetherness and the competition and just being so much better than everyone else. And then all of a sudden that's not there anymore. And yeah, I get that. I can understand. I don't know what that's like, but yeah.
He also did talk about, and this is something he's mentioned before, just the running back market, and he wants to push it forward.
Yeah.
Because him and some of the other guys, whether it was Derrick Henry or Josh Jacobs, they were all in conversation. They all wanted to get paid and it wasn't happening for them. They were all frustrated by the way running backs in the league had been devalued. So he gets to push it forward now. He's the highest paid running back of all time. But he's I'm ready for the next guy to be the highest paid. And I think that's cool. I think there's a brotherhood among position groups in the NFL that wasn't there 15 years ago.
It seems that way. And I think part of that is, the tight ends all get together and they have tight end school and
tight end U,
whatever. Thank you for correcting me.
The offensive linemen get together.
The receivers get together. And I think the running backs were kind of united by the fact that they were underpaid and undervalued. It brought a lot of them together. So yeah, it's a cool thing.
Yeah. That's all I had on Saquon. We are finishing this recording. It's around 5 p.m. on Monday. Give me a prediction. What's the next thing to happen with the Eagles?
I was going to say my prediction was going to be Nate Hobbs is going to sign with the Packers. Okay, prediction. I'm going to say tomorrow morning we find out Mekhi Becton is re-signed with the Eagles.
Wow.
Yeah,
that would be a big splash.
Yeah,
I'd be surprised by that. I think it'll be the opposite. I think Becton's going to end up somewhere else. If the Eagles re-sign someone, I think Oren Burks is the most logical re-sign. Now, I do think they should be in on the market for some other players who were released elsewhere, whether it's Draymond Jones or even a reunion with Hargrave. I think would make sense. That defensive tackle spot to me is one
I like that
filling it makes sense to me. And I don't know if it'll be tomorrow or the next day, but at some point, I think they are going to sign a free agent there.
I was unaware that the 49ers released him.
Yeah.
He's only there 2 years. Had the big year in 23, and then he only played 3 games last year, right? He was hurt all year.
Torn triceps, so we'll fit right in. Actually, the interesting thing, Brandon Graham did talk to Hargrave about the injury.
Oh, really?
When he was like trying to come back, and he reached out to Hargrave.
He's 32, but he would have a different role here than, the expectation wouldn't be like when he went to 49ers. He was expected to be
at that time. It was like a 4-year, $84 million deal, which at the time was huge. Now it's like Milton's laughing at it, but that's life in the NFL.
But I would think you get him fairly cheap. And I'm sure he can eat up some snaps. You wouldn't need him to be that double-digit sack guy that he was here. At least in 2022, he was. Mm-hmm. So I like that name.
Yeah. All right.
Good locker room guy.
Yeah, we'll see if any of those come true. No questions today. We had a lot to talk about, but send us them about what's happened so far, what you think is going to happen, eagleeyednbcuni.com. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. Rueben, any final words?
No, I'm good, but thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Always happy to. For Rueben Frank, I'm Dave Zangaro. This has been Eagle Eye presented by Nissan. We'll talk to you soon.